I never thought I'd be the guy writing a story like this, but here I am. My name's Mike, and I've been married to Lisa for about 8 years now. When we first got married, everything seemed perfect. Funny how quickly that illusion can shatter. We had a pretty good life, or at least I thought so. I was working as a project manager at a construction firm, and Lisa was a marketing executive. We had plans, dreams, a beautiful house, a dog, the usual American dream stuff. But over the past year or so, I started noticing little things that didn't add up. Lisa, usually so confident and sharp-tongued, started acting weird. She'd be secretive about her phone, always hiding it when I came into the room or making sure she was the one holding it. I'd catch her deleting messages, or she'd suddenly get defensive if I tried to look at her screen. I brushed it off at first. Maybe she was just stressed at work or being paranoid. But then I noticed her phone bill had a ton of unknown numbers, calls at odd hours, and texts I couldn't see. She brushed me off each time I brought it up, calling me paranoid, saying I was just insecure. One night I came home early from work because I wasn't feeling well. I decided to take a quick nap before dinner. I was half asleep when I heard her talking on the phone in the bedroom. It was muffled, but I could make out a voice, definitely not her boss or a friend. It sounded intimate, flirtatious, even. I froze. My stomach twisted. When she hung up, I walked in and she looked at me like I'd caught her stealing something. I asked her who she was talking to, and she immediately snapped back with that bitchy attitude she always gets, saying I was invading her privacy, that I was imagining things. I told her I knew she was cheating, and her face just twisted into this smirk, like I was an idiot for even doubting her. She said I was just insecure, that I was paranoid, that I had no right to accuse her without proof. But I had plenty: hidden messages, the phone calls, her weird behavior, and that night, I found her phone open on our bed with a text chain that made my blood run cold. It was clear. She'd been seeing someone, and from the tone of the messages, it wasn't just some fling. It was intense, passionate. I was devastated, but I knew I needed to confront her properly. I didn't want to just walk away in the dark, not without understanding what I was up against. That's when I started digging deeper into her phone, her emails, and even her social media. It was messy, and it hit me hard. This wasn't just a one-time thing. She had been lying, sneaking around, betraying me behind my back for months. And the worst part, she had the nerve to deny it, to accuse me of being paranoid and insecure. But I wasn't crazy. I saw the evidence, and I knew she'd been lying about everything for a long time. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying everything, trying to make sense of it. I felt a mix of anger, heartbreak, and confusion. How could she do this to me, to us? I mean, I get it, people cheat. It's terrible, but what hurt more was her attitude, her dismissiveness, her outright lying and snapping at me like I was the crazy one. I never thought I'd be that guy who got cheated on, especially by someone I loved so much. But here I was, staring at a future I no longer recognized. I had no idea what to do next, but I knew I couldn't just pretend it didn't happen. Something had to change. After I found out, I spent a few days just wandering around in a fog. I didn't tell anyone. I just kept looking at her, waiting for her to slip up again, waiting for her to say or do something that would prove I wasn't crazy. She was still acting normal, well, normal for her. Bitchy, dismissive, always with that little smirk and that "I'm better than you" attitude. She'd brush off my questions, call me paranoid, accuse me of overreacting. She even had the audacity to tell me I was being insecure, that I was just jealous because she was prettier, smarter, more successful. But I knew better. Every time she brushed me off or threw her tantrums, I'd get more certain that she was hiding something. And the more I looked, the more I found. I started going through her emails and social media accounts, just trying to piece together what the hell was happening, and that's when I discovered the truth about her affair. It wasn't just some random fling. No, she was seeing someone who wasn't just some guy she met at a bar. It was someone who had a very specific connection to us, an expert in our family's history, someone who was supposed to help us trace our lineage. His name was Daniel, and he was the family genetic researcher. I was stunned. I mean, really stunned. How the hell does someone who's supposed to be tracing your family roots end up in bed with your wife? I couldn't believe it. It was a massive betrayal, not only of me but of our entire family. I couldn't wrap my head around how this could happen. I started digging more into Daniel's background. Turns out, he was someone who specialized in DNA analysis, genealogy, and ancestry testing. He'd been working with Lisa for months, supposedly helping us trace our lineage, but somewhere along the line, things got messy. They started crossing lines, and their work turned into something much more personal. I found evidence of their private conversations, late-night messages, and even some photos. She sent him pictures of herself in lingerie, claiming she was doing research, which was just another lie. The guy was all about the quick sex, the sneaking around. It was sickening. But what really hit me hard was a message she sent him, admitting that she felt trapped in our marriage, that I didn't satisfy her anymore, and that Daniel knew what to do. That was when I realized that her whole research project was just a cover-up for her affair. I felt like my stomach dropped out on me. All the trust I ever had in her just evaporated. I was furious, more furious than I'd ever been. But I also felt betrayed on a much bigger level. She was cheating with the guy who was supposed to help us with our family history, who was supposed to be neutral, objective. Instead, he was helping her cheat, helping her lie about who she was and who we were. It was like she was trying to rewrite everything, rewrite our history, and I was just a pawn in her game. I knew I couldn't just confront her yet, I had to be strategic. So I kept digging, gathering all the evidence I could find. I set up a meeting with Daniel, knowing I'd need to face him eventually. But I also wanted to see what she'd do next. And she did something unexpected. She started acting even more bitchy, more dismissive. She told me I was paranoid, crazy, that I was imagining things because I was insecure. She said Daniel was just a friend, that it was none of my business. She kept lying, saying I was overreacting, trying to gaslight me into doubting what I knew was the truth. That's when I realized she was playing a different game entirely. She was good at lying, at twisting things around. It was like she didn't even care that I knew she was cheating. She only cared about maintaining her image, her control. I felt humiliated, betrayed, and damn angry. I spent those days trying to decide what to do next. Part of me wanted to confront her right then, to tear her apart for what she did. But another part, more rational, knew I needed to plan, to think carefully. Because once I went all in, there was no turning back. And whatever I did, I knew my life was never going to be the same. I couldn't stay quiet forever. The more I thought about it, the more I knew I had to confront her head on, but I needed a plan. I didn't want to just accuse her blindly and cause a scene. I had to be smart about this. I started thinking about how I could catch her in the act, how I could get more definitive proof. My biggest fear was that she'd deny everything if I just barged in and accused her outright. So I decided to lay a trap. I installed a few discreet recording devices around the house, and I set up a hidden camera in our bedroom. I knew it was probably over the line, but I was desperate. I needed to see the truth with my own eyes. I also kept a close eye on her phone activity, her emails, and her social media. Every day I'd check for new messages, new signs of her lying. It was a stressful week, but I was determined to catch her red-handed. One evening, I pretended to go out with some friends. But I stayed home, hidden behind the couch with my phone in hand, waiting. About an hour after I left, I saw her leave the house. She slipped into her car and headed somewhere. I followed her, keeping a safe distance. She ended up at a small upscale hotel downtown. I parked nearby and watched her go inside. My heart was pounding. I couldn't believe she was actually cheating on me with Daniel, the family researcher. It was like some twisted soap opera, but it was real, and I was the victim. I waited for a while, and then I saw her come out an hour later, looking flustered, her face red. She glanced around nervously, then got into her car and drove off. I waited until I was sure she was gone, then I snuck in and checked the hotel room. I found evidence: her lipstick on the glass, her hair in the sink, and her phone with messages from Daniel. I also found a pair of her panties in the bathroom trash. That was the moment I knew I had enough proof. This wasn't just a suspicion anymore. This was real. I took pictures of everything, then left without being seen. I knew I had what I needed. The next day, I sat her down. I was ready to blow it all apart. I confronted her with the evidence, played the recordings I had, showed her the pictures, and handed her the phone with the messages. Her face went white and her mask of bitchy confidence crumbled. She started cursing at me, calling me crazy, saying I was stalking her, that I was a jealous, insecure mess. She even tried to gaslight me again, telling me I had no right to invade her privacy, that she deserved her secrets. But I didn't back down. I told her I knew everything. I told her that I was done pretending. The look in her eyes was a mix of anger, panic, and that typical attitude she always had, like she was superior to everyone else. She kept lying, kept denying everything, but I had the evidence. There was no way she could wiggle out of this one. Honestly, I felt a strange mixture of relief and rage. Relief because I finally had the truth, and rage because I'd been blind and naive for so long, trusting her, loving her even when I knew she was lying. That confrontation changed everything. I remember feeling this intense wave of emotional exhaustion, but also clarity. What surprised me most was how she kept insisting she was not like this, that she didn't mean for it to happen, and that she'd stop seeing Daniel. I didn't buy it, not anymore. I realized I was dealing with someone who didn't respect me, didn't care about the vows we made, and was more interested in her own pleasures than our marriage. From that moment, I knew I had a choice: stay and fight for a marriage that was already broken, or cut my losses, get out, and start over. Part of me still loved her, but I couldn't ignore what she did. I felt betrayed on every level: trust, respect, even the idea of family. It cut deep, and I knew the road ahead would be painful no matter what I decided. But I also knew I couldn't keep pretending she hadn't done this. I had to face the reality that my marriage was over, at least for now. After confronting her with all the evidence, the house felt colder somehow. Lisa's bitchy, dismissive attitude had vanished, replaced by a mix of rage and fear. She kept insisting she didn't mean for it to happen, that she was just caught up in some moment of weakness, that Daniel was just a friend and nothing more. But I wasn't buying her lies this time. I looked at her and saw someone who had lied to me for months, who had betrayed everything we had built together. The worst part was that she kept spinning her web of bullshit, trying to justify her actions. She said she felt neglected, unappreciated, that I had been distant lately. She threw in all the typical excuses, sickly sweet words about how she still loved me, how she wanted to fix things, but her eyes showed a different story. Her face was filled with that bitchy, sneering expression she always used when she thought she was smarter than everyone else. No matter what she said, I saw through it. I felt this huge surge of emotion: anger, sadness, betrayal. How long had this been going on? Was I just blind all along? I mean, I knew she was bitchy, difficult, and often dismissive, but I never imagined she'd go this far. It was like my whole life was a lie. I'd trusted her blindly, and she'd been sneaking around behind my back with Daniel, the guy who was supposed to be helping us with our family history. The irony was almost cruel. She was cheating on me with someone who was supposed to be researching our roots. I tried to stay calm, but my voice shook when I told her it was over. I said I wanted her out of the house, that I needed space to think. She threw a tantrum, screaming at me that I was overreacting, that I was a jealous, insecure fool. It was classic Lisa: bitchy, dismissive, and angry when she didn't get her way. That's when I realized I'd been living with someone who didn't respect me, who didn't care about our vows, and who was more interested in her own satisfaction than our marriage. I knew I had to make some decisions. Did I want to fight for this? Could I repair what was broken? Or was it better to cut my losses and walk away? Honestly, I was so hurt I couldn't see clearly at first. I was trembling inside, but I also knew I couldn't keep pretending everything was okay. She had crossed a line I never thought she'd cross, and I was done being naive. Over the next few days, I started packing my things. I didn't want to stay under the same roof anymore. Every time I looked at her, I felt this huge wave of disgust mixed with heartbreak. I'd loved her, believed in us, but she'd proven she was capable of betrayal on a level I never thought possible. I even thought about calling her friends, telling them what she'd done, but I held back. Part of me just needed time to breathe, to process what had happened. The funny thing is, as much as I was furious, I also felt this profound sense of loss. The woman I married, the woman I thought I knew, she was gone. replaced by this cold, manipulative stranger. It's like I'd been living with a mask all along, and it had finally fallen off. I realized that I wasn't just angry about the cheating. I was mourning the loss of the woman I once loved, the person who had seemed so confident and real. Now I was left with a bitter taste in my mouth and a question I couldn't answer. Could I ever trust again? Could I ever look at a woman the same way after she did this? I decided I needed time away, time to heal, to think, to figure out what I really wanted. I told her she needed to leave within a week. I didn't want her around anymore. And even as I was saying it, I felt a strange mix of relief and despair. It was the end of a chapter I thought would never close. I'd been blindsided, betrayed, and shattered, but I also knew I had to do what was best for me. The pain was real, but so was the resolve. I was done being her fool. Now I just had to figure out how to pick up the pieces. The day she finally left was one of the hardest of my life. She packed her bags with that bitchy attitude still lingering, throwing me nasty looks like I was the enemy. She kept insisting she was going to fix things, that she'd come back, that it was just a mistake. But I saw through her, saw the desperation, the lies, the manipulation. I told her she had to go, that I wouldn't be a part of her game anymore. She spat some last insults, called me insecure, accused me of ruining her life like I was the villain in this story. Watching her walk out that door, I felt a strange mix of relief, anger, and deep sadness. I'd lost a lot: trust, love, stability. But somehow, I also felt a weight lifting. I no longer had to pretend everything was okay when it clearly was. For the first time in months, I could breathe without that cloud of deception hanging over me. I stayed in the house for a few days after she left, just sorting through everything, trying to piece together what had happened and what I should do next. In those quiet days, I reflected on what her betrayal had taught me. It was a brutal lesson about trust, about how sometimes the people closest to you can turn out to be the biggest liars. I also realized how much I'd ignored the signs, how I dismissed her bitchy attitude, her dismissiveness, her laziness about our relationship. It all added up now, a pattern of someone who didn't respect me or our marriage. And the worst part, she'd been lying for so long, sneaking behind my back, playing her little game with Daniel, our family's own genetics researcher, no less. That was the real kicker. She was cheating with someone who was supposed to be helping us trace our roots. I started talking to a lawyer, figuring out what I needed to do to separate legally. I wanted the house, my savings, and custody of the dog if I could get it. I wasn't interested in her excuses anymore. I just wanted to rebuild my life. But deep inside, I knew I'd carry this betrayal with me forever. It was like a scar that wouldn't heal. Every time I looked at the house, I'd remember the lies, the cheating, the betrayal. Sometimes I wondered if I'd ever trust a woman again. Still, I decided I wouldn't let her define me. I had to move forward, even if that meant starting over. I threw myself into work, trying to stay busy, trying not to drown in my own thoughts. But I also began questioning everything: my judgment, my relationship choices, even my own happiness. I never thought I'd think about divorce as a good thing, but in this case, it felt like the only way to get free from the poison she'd left behind. Looking back now, I realize this has been one of the most painful experiences I've ever gone through, but also one of the most eye-opening. The truth hurts, but it also sets you free. I learned that when someone shows you who they really are, you have to believe them. Trust is fragile, and once it's broken, rebuilding it is almost impossible. I don't know what the future holds, but I do know I'm better off without someone who could do something so cruel, so manipulative. To anyone out there going through something similar, trust your gut. Don't ignore the red flags, no matter how much you love someone. And never let anyone, especially a partner, make you feel crazy for seeking the truth. Because once you find it, there's no going back. You have to decide whether to fight for what's left or walk away. For me, walking away was the only option left. Now, I just focus on healing and trying to rebuild something real, something that isn't built on lies. It's been a few months since Lisa left, and honestly, I've never felt such a mix of relief and heartbreak in my life. At first, I wondered if I was just bitter, if I was overreacting and rushing into some sort of revenge or anger-fueled decision. But the truth is, I knew I had to get out, had to cut the poison out of my life. I've started therapy, trying to process everything that happened and slowly building a new foundation for myself. What struck me most is how much this whole ordeal changed my perspective. I used to think trust was the foundation of any relationship. Now I realize it's a fragile thing, something you have to nurture and protect, or it can shatter in an instant. I also learned that people are better at hiding their true selves than I ever imagined. Lisa was so good at pretending, at lying and manipulating, that I didn't see her real face until it was almost too late. That's a lesson I'll carry with me for the rest of my life. Never ignore the signs, no matter how much you want to believe in the best. I think the biggest thing I've taken away from this is that I deserve honesty, respect, and loyalty. If someone can't give me that, then I'd rather be alone than in a relationship built on lies. I won't forget the pain, but I also won't let it define me. I'm learning to trust again, slowly, cautiously. I've started dating, but I'm doing it differently this time. I'm more aware, more cautious. I know now that love and trust are things you earn, not something you give blindly. As for Lisa, she's still trying to reach out, sending me messages, claiming she's sorry, that she made a mistake and wants a second chance. But I see through her now. Sorry doesn't undo the betrayal. Sorry doesn't fix the damage done. That ship has sailed. I've accepted that I can't fix what's broken and I don't want to. I've learned that sometimes walking away is the bravest thing you can do. Looking back, I realize this whole experience has made me stronger, more resilient, even if I wish it hadn't happened. It's taught me to value honesty above everything else, to listen to my instincts, and to never settle for less than I deserve. I've come to terms with the fact that love isn't enough if it's built on lies and deception. And as I rebuild my life, I do so with a clearer sense of who I am and what I want. If there's one thing I want anyone reading this to take away, it's this: don't ignore the signs. Don't let denial or fear keep you in a situation that's hurting you. Trust your gut, and when the time comes, have the courage to walk away, even if it hurts like hell. Because in the end, you're better off alone than in a relationship where betrayal has taken root. I'll never forget what happened, but I'm learning to move on stronger, wiser, and more hopeful than I was before. And maybe, just maybe, I'll find happiness again someday, simple and honest and real.